Well, it's Monday night, and that means it's 9 o'clock, and it's time for DylanTalksTone.com. Well, Dylan Talks Tone on the YouTubes. We do this every Monday night. If you're new to this channel, thanks for joining us. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have over 300 videos all about guitar tone, guitar tech, fixing stuff. They're not all an hour long. Some of them are only a few minutes long. And I think you'll really dig either format, either this live show or watching it in replay, or like in the whole situation where you just watch some how-to stuff. We have them like a minute and a half long. I think you'll really dig it. This is Leslie. She's with me every week. And tell them how they can participate in our show this very evening.
So if you're watching us live on YouTube, youtube.com/DylanTalksTone, and there's a chat feature there, and we're hanging out and chatting. And if you are in that chat window, when you see a response from Dylan Talks Tone on Monday nights only, that is me. So only during the live show. So feel free to hang out, ask questions, and interact with us.
Yeah. Let's talk real quick before we get going, because we got a really exciting show tonight. We have a guest, again, calling in about 10 minutes. But before we get to that, I just want to share this. Tonight's show is brought to you in part by MindToybox.com. Are you stressed out? You can't sleep? MindToybox offers holistic, frequency-based options without using harsh chemicals. So if you're tired of being tired, MindToybox is what you have been looking for. Check them out, mindtoybox.com. I will tell you, we had the owner of mindtoybox.com on our show last week. Live interview. You can check that out in the replays. It is incredible what he's doing with sound. Very, very cool. Let's see. What other news do we have going? We shot another installment on the Fence Postcaster today. I didn't really even say that we were going to do 4 episodes about the Fence Postcaster because I wasn't really sure at the time. But we've done 2. The third one comes out on Wednesday. And then I'm actually going to shoot a whole nother one. I think it's going to make some people mad.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. So, but that's okay. It'll create some conversation, and I want to know what everybody's thinking, because we're going to talk about stuff that you shouldn't do to your guitar, but at the same time, just play it. Like, don't treat it like a trailer queen, you know? Well, that would be a hot rod, but you know what I'm saying? Same thing. Like, go out and use it. Like, play the thing. Let it get some scratches. Let it get some wear, stuff like that. So I'm pretty excited about that episode. Tonight's show, tonecrate.com. Clifton Miles from tonecrate.com is coming on our show. For those of you that are not familiar, we have a video on this also. He has a subscription box for Kemper profiles and for drum sounds.
Which is so cool, because that's such a popular medium for many industries right now.
Right. Yep. I like getting them in the mail every month. It's really cool for me because, well, I have a Kemper, you know, so getting a new sound, getting something, it's inspiring. And what's interesting is, even when it's an amp profile that I don't normally use, it's still like, oh, this is really fun, because you know, we'll talk about it with him, but it's really cool. And I also want to talk to him about his methods a little bit. I want to talk to him about the drum side of it, because I don't know what that is. And I also want to talk to him about, because I'm not into drums. And I also want to talk to him about what he does to help new artists. I just want to know.
Good.
I didn't even hit him with that question or nothing. That's probably, he might be listening right now, but you know, and then maybe we'll take you on a tour of his website and show you what he does and stuff. It's pretty cool. So what's going on over there in comment land?
Just got some people letting us know they're here and that they're listening. So we had a question last week
Okay.
about so speaking of mindtoybox.com, one of the questions we had last week was about the bone conduction headphones, and that listener reached out and talked to Jack about it, and they do work really well.
Really?
So that was really cool feedback to come, to bring it back from last week's show.
I'm so glad that I don't know if you guys know this or not, but last week's episode got about 3 times the views over the same amount of time. So what I mean by that is I kind of track like the first 24 hours and the first 48 hours and whatever, for each show. So I can kind of tell how, because, people will keep watching these things on into the future. But usually if you find this show, like this episode right here, if you find this episode like 3 weeks in the future, chances are you'll pick a few pieces out of it. But what I found with last week's show is that the numbers were very, very, very high, triple what they normally are. And people were listening to the whole thing because they were very, very interested in that. I'm so glad that we were able to reach as many people as we were and help a lot of people. And Jack said that a lot of people reached out to him to get the download that we gave them.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, in the show. So I'm hoping that people get some feedback from it. I even spoke to my dad about it tonight because he's a Vietnam vet, suffers from PTSD, and he hadn't had a chance to listen to last week. And so I was telling him, you got to listen to it because it's something completely different. So I would definitely encourage. That's one of those episodes I hope of our show that I hope continues to get views over and over and over.
And reach people.
And reach more people just for the point of what it is, being helpful in that way. So, no, it's very, very cool. That was pretty awesome. Any other questions? I think we have it's going to be about 2 or 3 minutes before he calls in. And I'll tell you a couple of things. One is I am going on a business trip this weekend. I was just telling her before the show that I'm really excited because this sounds weird to say that I'm really excited to do something that doesn't have anything to do with music. I'm going to shoot an adventure expo. So it's going to be all about like living off the grid and adventure vehicles and expedition vehicles, that sort of thing, which is like my other main passion besides music is car stuff, and especially off-road vehicle stuff. You guys have seen the helmet around the studio, and you've seen me post about other things about it. So I'm really excited about that. So we're going to go out and shoot some stuff and it's going to be really super fun. And then we go on vacation for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about our schedule. Well, we have a couple minutes before he calls. We are not going to have a show the week of Memorial Day. Well, Memorial Day. That day. Yeah. We're not going to have a show that day. Other than that, even on vacation and stuff, we're going to probably figure out a way to do it.
We will.
Because it's true. Because now that and I'll tell you, that is another thing that frees us up with the whole YouTube thing is we literally can broadcast from anywhere. We're not stuck here. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it'll always be the same audio quality and all that sort of stuff, but it'll be super fun to be somewhere else maybe, and there he's calling. So let's go ahead and get him on the phone. Clifton.
Dylan.
What's going on, sir?
Not a whole lot. How are you?
Are on the radio as we speak. Well, not on the radio. You're on the YouTubes.
Awesome. I'm glad to be on the YouTubes.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So, let's just real quick. I kind of gave you a little bit of an intro here. Tonecrate.com. We talked about the fact it's kind of a subscription service. But we have a lot of viewers that aren't familiar. I mean, they've watched my Kemper videos, so they kind of know what it is. But I want to get let's just, first of all, you introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and how you got to this point where you're doing what you're doing. and then we'll get maybe a little bit more technical about what it actually is and how it works. But tell your story first. Just tell us how you got here.
Sure. Would be glad to. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Absolutely. You sound great.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I'm a record producer from San Antonio, Texas, and I have been making records professionally full-time for about 10 years now. And that's pretty much how I got to where I am, is just by making a bunch of records. And I mic up cabs and dial in tone for a living. That's what I do. It's a large majority of what I do is cutting guitars, bass. I mean, everything, vocals, drums. I do the whole 9 yards. But yeah, that's the short answer. But yeah, I started back in 2008. I came out of a career professionally selling automobiles. That's a fancy way of saying I was a car salesman. And I started making records after the recession hit. I wasn't making the kind of income that I was used to, so I decided I was going to do what I really wanted to do. And I started my recording business, and I began cutting demos for people because I had very bad gear, and then I improved my gear and improved my knowledge, and the recording started to get better, and then started to charge more. And it's just been a steady incline to the point to where now I'm getting, the kind of pay that I've, had always dreamed of getting from my clients, and I'm making the kind of records that I've always wanted to make. And I've had records that I've made sold in stores next to artists that I grew up idolizing. And so it's been a wonderful journey. And getting a Kemper, was a pretty game-changing event for me because of my situation. It's been absolutely incredible in the record making process, especially given that I have a studio and I can create my own tones. So
right.
That was kind of the foundation of how the whole thing started. Is I got a Kemper. I had a business colleague, actually now a business partner, bring a Kemper to my studio, and I said what a lot of it's kind of funny, actually, a lot of your viewers to our little YouTube video that you did for us were commenting the things that I was saying, which were, oh, get that out of here. Like I like tube amps. Like I like real powerful amps that have tubes and make loud sounds. That's my thing. Get this thing out of here. And the guy was like, dude, please just look at this. It's revolutionary. There's nothing like it. And I said, I don't believe in this stuff, but okay, let's do it. So we created a Kemper profile of my settings on my favorite amp, and we recorded a pass through the Kemper of my profile of my amp, and we did a pass with the amp itself. And me, of cutting records for 10 years, could not tell the difference between either. So inside a mix, it would be 100% undiscernible. And as I began to research more into the Kemper and how it works and what it does, I began to realize that a lot of the producers and engineers that I idolize, even today, said the same thing. You can't tell. I did not want to believe in the Kemper. In fact, I didn't believe in it. I wish that something like this didn't exist, because it's crazy. But I'm so glad that it does, because it's been game changing for what I do in so many ways. But it was definitely something that I had to see to believe. But I not to keep going off about the Kemper, but I'll just say this, and this is the analogy that I have heard that I put together that best describes a Kemper to people who are not believers. Saying that you don't like a Kemper because it doesn't sound like a real amp is like saying you don't like an iPod or an MP3 player because you heard a demo recording through it. It's irrelevant to the quality of the machine what you're getting unless you're putting in great stuff. Like if you heard an iPod for the first time and someone showed you a really terrible garage demo and said, hey, check out my iPod, listen to this jam, you'd be like, what the heck? This sounds awful. but it's because it was a bad recording. Similar to the Kemper, if you're getting bad profiles, it's going to sound bad. But there are a lot of great profiles out there, and that's kind of why I set out to do what I set out to do, is because there are a lot more bad profiles out there than there are good profiles.
Oh, absolutely. Like when you just plug in the profile manager, oh, I have 8,500 profiles available to me right now, and the number is growing as I look at it, and very few of them are that good.
Oh, absolutely. I went through every profile that was inside the Kemper when I got it, and I identified out of I don't know how many it comes with.
250 or 300 or something.
Yeah, mine came with like 300 or 450 or something like that. I found about 30 that I liked. And of the 30, I identified probably about 6 that I would actually turn to and use like on a recording. The rest were kind of just like little like effects and kind of fluffer sounds that I actually couldn't make myself because I don't have rotary speakers and things like that.
Right, right.
But yeah, it was just kind of fancy stuff. But yeah, I mean.
So I have a couple questions for you. So when we're talking about the practical application of this, because these are going to be questions that people are going to ask, and maybe they already are asking them. You mentioned that you profiled an amp that you already had. So how often do you do that? And why would you use the Kemper profiler if you have the amp already?
That's a fantastic question. And for me, it's because of space limitations. So I work out of 2 studios here in town when I'm recording a band. I have a studio that I go record drums at, and I sublease that studio. It's a Hollywood Studios run by Grammy-nominated producer Mac Damon, and it's a big, beautiful place. Now, I've owned my own studios in the past, or leased commercial spaces, and I did not enjoy being a commercial studio space lessor, if you will. So when the opportunity came up for me to work out of this studio, I took that opportunity, and I built a room onto my home that I built from the ground up that is specifically made for mixing and doing some recording. And so I don't have an isolation booth. So I had to rig a situation with my setup to where when I record guitars, I have a cab in a different room, and there's still like very, very, very loud resonance, and I still have a cab in another room woofing through my walls, so I don't get a true stereo separation, if that makes any sense. So like for me, if I can, it's almost like an extra step in the process to save a lot of headache. What I do with the band now is I will set up the amp, the cab, the mics, dial in the settings, even find a pedal or something that I like, and put it into the chain, dial in the tone specifically for that band, then we'll Kemper it. We'll Kemper profile it. That way, if someone accidentally knocks over a mic or a tube dies or a fuse blows, we're not, completely SOL. We're fine. We already got the tone loaded. We just go. Because for years, that was the problem. Some guy has one too many beers and walks into the cutting room and stumbles over a mic, and there was your hours of tweaking just down the drain. Now you're having to like try and match what you got before and make sure it doesn't sound weird. It's like those days are over.
Or if you have to cut in something, do some edits,
Right. Yeah. God forbid some guy always plays something the wrong way and we don't realize it. Or he's like, that's not how we meant to play the riff, but we recorded it wrong. I got to recut it. Now it's like, okay, you just turn on the Kemper, move to the tone you used, and you're ready to go. There isn't this painstaking hour-long process of trying to redial the tone, and it not even come close, and you're pissed and they're pissed and everyone's pissed. It's just made the process smoother. And the only reason it works is because when you create Kemper profiles of whenever you're getting a Kemper profile of your rig, there isn't a loss of quality or tone. It's literally a carbon copy of the tone. Like if it's done right, there there are people that, you know, maybe are new to Kemper and inexperienced with Kemper and the way it works, whom aren't maybe making the best profiles, in which case you can say, that doesn't sound anything like a 5150, or that doesn't sound anything like a Fender Hot Rod. Well, it's probably because they didn't know how to dial it in or mic it up properly. But for me, I'm getting tones that are spot on, and sometimes I can even beat my tones with the Kemper because of the way it works.
Right.
I get something that sounds a little more aggressive or a little prettier.
So how many artists, let's say, you know, you work in a 6-month period, what percentage of artists are using Kempers on a, you know, and I'm talking about people that we've heard of on a small or large scale. What percentage in a 6-month period are you actually using them in a studio?
Myself?
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't cut a record since I got the Kemper without the Kemper.
No kidding. Because
yeah,
I've heard people say that, well, yeah, I mean, you can use it on tour, blah, 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 but if you're really in the studio doing something serious, it's just not going to work.
That's not true at all. I know some people, and you know, if I'll be transparent. If I had a different space, and I had true separation of my sound, there probably that ratio would probably change from 100% to maybe 60%. Only because I would have more freedom to experiment with cabs and things like that while making a record with the band. And, you know, I might say, hey, you know what? I know I'm going to lock this room, and I know no one's going to stumble in here. And if the tube dies, I have some tubes here. If I remove all those variables that I love about using the Kemper in the studio, and I would probably, you know, go back to recording an amp live again, just because I like it. It's fun. I do miss it to an extent, but I don't miss any of that headache. You know, it's a what do you call it? There's a give and take. You know what I mean? It's a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, it's cool to fire up the amps, but it's not cool to be inconvenienced with all that noise and that that wall rumbling and, you know,
right.
and all of the things about, like I said, about the mics and the tubes and the fuses and all that crap. And so, yeah, it is. But the fact that my tones are my tones and they sound exactly the same, I'm not really missing it. You know what I mean? Like, there's not really something that I'm fiending for that I'm not getting. And in fact, I will say this, it's re-inspired a lot of creativity, because I've profiled amps that I don't own, and now I have them forever. And so, for example, I don't have a Mesa triple rectifier, but I have a friend that does. And he brought it over, and we profiled it for my Ultimate Tone Crate Volume 1 bundle. And that profile I use quite often, but I don't own that amp. So in that regard, it's really incredible. And so my friend I mentioned, Mac Damon, he has a whole collection of tube amps, some 65 amps. He has a divided by 13 amps. He has AC30. He has a Fender I don't know if it's a DeVille or a Hot Rod Deluxe or something, but he uses Kemper 60% of the time as well. I mean, even with those, he's in a different realm than I am. I'm more of in a hard rock, metal kind of realm. He's in a more of an alternative rock, Texas country kind of situation. So he likes those real nice, clean gain kind of amps. But even him, he's using the Kemper because we just understand the power, and we're guys that work with tone literally for a living.
Right. Yep. No, that's really cool. Apparently we got some viewers telling us that the internet is sluggish. I'm not seeing any trouble though. Okay. Well, let's keep on rolling then. So, talk to us then. And I have had the same experience that you had. And, even just before I even met you, is that if it's good, it's good. If the profile is good, then the sound is good. It is what it is. If it's not good, then that's when you're going to, and people don't understand how to use it. And get a little, maybe they get the wrong impression of what a Kemper is. Then they start to run into trouble. So then that means, then you have you've done two things, and I want to ask you to kind of explain this for us a little bit. you have a method to profile amps, and then you also have a completely different way to distribute those profiles to the public. So tell us what tonecrate.com is doing differently than all the other guys.
Not a problem. Yeah. So there are, as you're aware, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people who make profiles, and with every person that makes profiles and sells them, commercially, everyone has their own different message. Just like any other record producer, everyone has their way of miking cabs, and different people's ears have different people's tastes. So tone is a very subjective thing. But when I was doing R&D, when I decided I wanted to start, distributing profiles, I wanted to make sure that what my ear felt was cool was generally accepted as cool amongst most people who like the kind of amps that I'm primarily going to be working with. And so I pretty much just adapted what I typically do in the studio while making records, which is called a Fridman technique, which was developed by a gentleman named Frederick Nordstrom from Sweden. He owns a studio called Studio Fridman. And he's very, very, very popular in the metal world. And he actually developed this new mic technique, which sounds amazing. It's my favorite mic technique ever. And for higher gain amps, I'll preface that. And so what I did was the Kemper only allows one microphone input for profiling. So what I do is I actually take these two microphones, depending on the amp, I use different ones, but typically it's two dynamic microphones. Most people will use a dynamic and a condenser of some sort. I actually use two dynamics, and I actually sum those to mono on a console, and I feed the output of the console into the Kemper. And so I'll take the two mics and I will blend them on the console to my taste to make sure that they're, bright enough but not fizzy, and they have enough bottom but they're not woofy or flubby. And when I get the right blend with the knobs, which I'm just using my ears and turning knobs on a board, then from that point, we'll start the profiling process. And the cool thing is, because you're running the microphones into pre's before they hit the Kemper, it adds a little bit of bite and a little bit of good mojo to the tone. And a lot of guys are using my profiles live now, and they're telling me, like, this is the most accurate sounding profile that I've heard, as far as like playing live through a cab and stuff is concerned as well. There's a few bands that are touring with my profiles live, and they're using them as their primary rhythm tone, which was really humbling and amazing to hear. But it just tells me that I'm doing something right. And so, as far as the method of distribution, we'll go back to when I got a Kemper and was finally sold on the idea and bought one and had one and decided I wanted to search for some tones that were maybe, beyond what I had amp wise, right? Because in my home studio I have a 5150, PV 5150, and we have a Behringer Uberschall, which are both real nice, like high gain amps. And everyone that I found whom I would trust to buy profiles from had a nice website, had good marketing content, looked nice, felt expensive. The packs were enormous. I mean, enormous. It was the traditional.
You'd have to buy like 50 amps at a time or 25 amps at a time.
Yeah, I mean, even like 10, even to me, like 10 or 12 amps. I'm like, I don't want all that. And then to top it off, it was, over $100 or $150. And I'm thinking, like, I just spent, upwards of, $1,800 to get a Kemper. And now these people are wanting me to spend $100 to get tones. And then when I found profiles of amps that I like that were, in a price range that I would be more comfortable spending, I mean, the site was sketchy looking, and it's like I didn't, the audio examples like maybe weren't that great, and it's just like I don't know. I just nothing about it felt good to me. And having started several businesses over the years, and amidst my studio, I'm kind of an entrepreneur. I said there's a better way to do this, and I have long been fascinated as a business person with subscription services, and in particular, gentleman Stephen Slate, who's world renowned in the audio industry for his drum samples. He began distributing his plugins. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of plugins at $15 a month, and I have subscribed to his service for years, and would never dream of canceling because of how much value it adds to what I do. And I said, you know what, this would be there's something here to this, and I feel like I could put the dots together, and consulted a couple of friends that, kind of were in the industry, and ran my idea by them, and they said, that's a great idea, but you should take it a step further and attach, cool people to these rigs. And so that's kind of where the birthplace of Tone Crate came from, because we're not just distributing profiles monthly, and drum samples monthly. We're actually distributing drum samples and Kemper profiles monthly of people that are known in the industry and bands that are cool. So I actually have a well-known artist come to my studio. I'll fly him in from whatever state he's in. I will have whatever gear he uses here at his disposal, or if they're local, they will bring it themselves. And we will actually create their tone with them here in the studio and create profiles of it. And that is the pack that our subscribers are getting. So, for example, our first month, we just launched in April. We had a gentleman named Sebastian Elizondo from the band Darkness Divided, and they're on Victory Records. They're a metal band, and he actually lives here where I live in San Antonio, which is why we have a pre-existing relationship. And he has a Hughes and Kettner Grandmeister Deluxe, and that thing is extremely versatile. And he brought it in, and we created a full pack around that amp, and we created settings that were custom to him. We created settings that were more neutral for people to be able to tweak to their own taste. And people just absolutely love it. They absolutely love it. This month we have a gentleman named David Coloma. He plays in the band Head Crusher, which is, again, another metal band. Well, the heart of our business right now is kind of in metal. Here, as we continue to grow, we're going to neutralize a little bit and start leaning to more neutral things like rock tones and cleaner tones, indie tones. But for the first few months, we're kind of pushing with the metal.
Makes sense. No, if you already have an audience for it, especially because it's what you do a lot in your studio, it makes total sense. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. From a business perspective, though, I don't want this to become like Metal Crate. I want it to be a true tone crate where people who make country music, or people who make indie music, or people who do classic rock or blues, they can subscribe and know, okay, some months I'm going to get a high gain amp from some death metal artist, and maybe there's a clean tone, or maybe there's a low gain tone on that, Mesa high gain amp that I might actually like. And some months you're going to get something that you absolutely love. And just like other crate services, that's the idea. It's a surprise, but you always know you're going to get something of value. And I think it also is going to keep people's mind a little bit more open to trying different things. For us, like I as a guy whose heart is kind of in the metal world, using an AC30 isn't something that happens for me every day. But I do want those profiles, because there's going to be a time where, some client's going to come in and we're going to want to soften things up, and I'm going to need a nice, AC30 type tone on my record. So yeah, I do see the value, and I do have love for all types of amps and styles, but yeah, so that's kind of what we're thinking as far as the future is concerned with our with our subscription service. But that's kind of what makes us unique. We're creating the profiles a little bit different than most, and we're distributing them in a subscription service month to month. The price of our service is just $10, which is absolutely incredible, because you're getting drum samples from the kit of a well-known artist, and you're getting Kemper profiles from the actual rig of a well-known artist, and it's only $10. And just to tell you, in my search, I did find some $10 profiles, and they were definitely from some sites that I wouldn't feel comfortable putting my credit card information into.
Right. So, exactly.
That was my goal, is to just make this feel the way that I would want to feel when I bought something, so others felt comfortable engaging with our content. But they also got something that was of a tremendous value at a price that doesn't kill the bank.
No, absolutely. I will say, so I've had my Kemper now for about 1.5 years, and I have experimented with, there are good profiles out there. There are good ones. But these ones are different. Whatever you're doing is different. One of the big objections that people have with Kempers that they run into, that they hear, and you mentioned it briefly, is the fizzy thing, right? So you could take the fizzy thing and then the dynamics of the volume knob. So I'll tell you, my number one way of playing guitar is I find a 1 amp that I like at 1 gain setting, and then I turn the volume up and down on the guitar, and that's how I control everything. And if you don't have a good profile, that doesn't work. And I will tell you, so we were talking about feeding imagination, the Friedman JJ100 profile that you sent me last month or whenever that was, on low gain, that is my number one favorite profile. And I play it with a Tele, play it with a Strat, like low gain guitars, like really low output guitars. And then I'm actually using a Keeley D&M drive in front of it, and it does everything I want. It's like I would have never said, oh, I want a Friedman JJ100 Jerry Cantrell signature amp, being the player that I am, and here it is, my new favorite tone. So, job done, right? Like that's what you were that's what you were wanting to do, is inspire that sort of playing in people, and it's totally working. It's awesome.
Thank you. And that's amazing to hear. Something that you just said, which is really amazing, which is something that I never would have thought of, not owning a Kemper, but having the Kemper has made me so into pedals, because there's something really cool about having a guitar pedal in front of you, one that you can touch and twist a knob and audition amps like nothing in the Kemper. And that, I've never been I had one pedal. It was a Maxon OD 808, which is like a tube screamer from Ibanez. Yep. And I mean, every metal guy in the world who has a studio setup has that pedal. So I had to have one, and I used it for pretty much every record I've made in the last, over the last like 6 or 7 years. I love it. But now that I'm using the Kemper, I have grown this like borderline obsession with guitar pedals. And so I've been collecting pedals a lot. And it's really fun, because now, instead of auditioning amps, which would take forever, it's very quick to audition amps. We just twist the knob, and all these tones that I've spent months and months dialing in, we find one, and then now we spend time auditioning pedals. We say, okay, well, the Maxon doesn't really work as well with this amp that we like, but the Protone, Dead Horse Overdrive does, or, maybe we have a Frycy Cat Palace pedal that sounds really cool too. That's an overdrive, and maybe we want to use a preamp, pedal instead to boost the signal, so we don't have as much gain, some stuff like that. So it's been a lot of fun, and I didn't mean to get us sidetracked here, but
no, that's okay. I will tell you, a lot of our viewers tonight, it looks like, are asking about drum samples, because we do have a fair amount of people that obviously they don't have a Kemper, and so maybe some of this stuff is not of direct use to them, but drum samples are of use to everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk drum samples for a few minutes for those of us that don't have Kempers that might be listening tonight.
Definitely. So our services, we spent the last, half hour talking about Kemper, but that's really only 50% of our service. The other 50% is in drum samples. And so to create our drum samples, I'm pretty good at, like I said, I've been making records for a long time, so I'm pretty good at tuning drums, but I'm not like the Michael Jordan of tuning drums or anything. But I know the Michael Jordan of tuning drums, and his name is Matt Brown, and he actually lives out in Florida. His nickname is Professor Drum. He's drum tech records for bands that I've grown up listening to. He was the drummer of the band 10 Years. He's currently drumming in the studio for the band Yes. He's actually mixing their record as well. Incredible person. So humbled to call him a friend now. And we flew him to Texas to tech our drum samples. And so he came, and we actually had 3 of our artists, the first 3 months worth of our service, there in the studio. And we created this sample library there with Matt Brown in person tuning our drums. And so month 1, we had a drummer named Kevin Talley, who is a legend. He's drummed in some very, very famous metal bands. He was one of 5 people who got to audition for Slayer when their drummer quit, which is a really big deal back in the early 2000s. And to work with him was amazing. And his drum samples sound absolutely killer. He had a kick drum, 2 snare drums, and 4 toms, 2 racks and 2 floors. And they sound absolutely killer. This month, we have Lyle Cooper, who drummed in the band The Faceless, and he has 4 toms, a kick, and a snare drum. And we actually broke his sample library down a little bit different. So in his pack, you actually get to control the different microphones on the snare drum. So you have snare top mics, snare side, and snare bottom. So we actually distribute our samples in a WAV file, so you can load them into any sampler program that you like, or we provide you TCI files, which work with Slate Trigger, which is the kind of the de facto drum sampler that I would say 95% of the world uses. And if you don't have that, I believe it's not a whole lot of money to get it, and it's definitely worth your while because it comes with its own drum samples as well that sound pretty cool.
I have a question from a viewer who's asking, sure. How do you, and this is because actually I know who this is, and he's a sound guy. So he asks, how do you like to mic a snare?
Nice. So for this sample library, we actually had 5 different mics on the top alone.
Oh, wow.
And we had an AKG 414 miking the side, and we had, I believe it was an AKG 451 on the bottom. And so what we did for example, on this month's sample library, we have, I believe, 3 different snare top options. We have a Telefunken, I believe it's an M80. We have an Onyx i5, and we have, of course, an SM57. And the way that I like to mic a snare drum is very similar to one of my heroes, which is Terry Date. Terry Date recorded Deftones' White Pony and Pantera just some legendary Slayer, obviously, some legendary metal bands and rock bands. And so what I do is I like to angle the dynamic mic about, I don't know if I always kind of eyeball it, but if I had to describe it, it would be kind of leaning at maybe slightly less than a 45-degree angle, kind of pointing roughly towards the center of the snare, with the edge of the capsule hovering, I would say, about 3/4 of an inch to an inch above the rim. I really like snares that have kind of a decay or to them, and I know that's more of a tuning thing, but when I have the mic in that area, you get a really balanced body to a ring. It's not excessive. I know that describing that, you're probably imagining a sample that's going, but it's not. It sounds really, really, really nice. The samples that we created for this library are definitely not excessively ringy. They do have some nice decay, but they're not going or anything like that. I save that for when I do my own records. These are pretty neutral that will work. They're very well tuned, like I said, from Matt Brown, and so they'll work in a variety of applications from country to metal. In fact, Grammy nominated producer Billy Decker, or mixing engineer Billy Decker, who is in Nashville, posted a video using our samples in one of his mixes that went I don't know which mix it was in particular, but he's had a lot of top tens, and he liked our samples as well.
No, that is really cool. So what you're saying is, even if you don't have a Kemper, $10 a month is pretty cheap to even get the drum samples. I mean, that's
without a doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're doing any serious tracking, and if you have Slate especially, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for sure.
For sure. Yeah, we spend a lot of time, debating a price point for this thing, and a lot of mentors said I was, shooting myself in the foot pricing this thing at $10 a month because it's just so inexpensive. But the thing I said is it's kind of a Netflix situation. It's if the price is low enough, and so that's a no-brainer where anyone can afford it, so that it's low enough so that people who don't have a Kemper would still see the value just to get the drum samples. That's a win for me, because I don't notice $10 a month leaving my bank account, but I do notice $20 or $30 leaving.
Right.
And there's a reason why I can't tell you what day Netflix pulls from my account, because it doesn't matter. It's $7 and I use it when I use it and I love it.
Right.
But for the same thing for drum samples and Kemper profiles, I mean, $10, I'll waste $10 at Whataburger, I don't know if y'all have Whataburger where you're at, but it's just it is such a ridiculous no-brainer to get. And if I told you guys what I'm giving away for $10, the cost it took to put this production together, you guys, I mean, every single one that's listening would subscribe just because, of the value.
No. And you can tell it is evident. It is evident in the product for sure. And I think that's, and obviously, I've told you this, and I say it in public all the time. I won't do a demo video or have somebody on my show that I don't believe in. I really, really dig this stuff, and I think it's really good, and you're a great guy as well. And when we get out there to San Antonio here at the end of the summer, we're going to come and tour and hang out and talk some more tech, because I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing and making it accessible to more people and inspiring more people. The other thing too to not forget about is when you subscribe to this stuff, let's say you don't even have a Kemper, let's say you're just doing it for the drum samples. Once you download that, you have it. So it's not like it goes away when the next month comes out. So what this means is if you subscribe for a year, and he actually has discounts for a year subscription if you pay for it all at once, after a year, you've compiled some powerful recording tools for what? $120. I mean, if you go on Musician's Friend or you go on, Guitar Center and go look at some box software. Go look at boxed software of samples of Kemper profiles of anything, and you're going to pay a lot more money to get the same amount of content that you would get subscribing for a year from you. A lot more.
Precisely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It would be hard pressed to find a year's worth of content the way that we're producing it in just the drum sample realm for under $100. And yet we're also getting the Kemper aspect of it for those that have that. When I'm talking to somebody that doesn't have a Kemper, I just let them know, like, it's $10 a month for drum samples. And if you own a Kemper, it's no extra charge. It's like, it's just there if you need it. And a lot of people have said, I'm planning to get a Kemper, so I'm kind of just collecting these for when I do, which is pretty cool. We actually have, I would say 30% of our subscribers at the moment don't own Kempers. It's just that those that do, it's such a ridiculous no-brainer that they can't help but doing it, No,
and actually that might be the tipping point for some people. I misspoke earlier. Somebody asked on our little comment thread here how much a Kemper costs. Now, I paid $3,000 for mine, but that's because I have the powered one and I bought the remote. But you can get one. You could probably go on Reverb right now and get one for $1,500.
Yeah.
I would say $1,500 for a not powered one with no pedal. You could probably get one for $1,500 and then subscribe to this thing. And in 6 months, you would have more power at your fingertips. Well, in the day you bought it, you would have more power. But I'm just saying you would start to really feel a lot of value for money, considering a deluxe reissue costs $1,200, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go buy a Fender Deluxe reissue, it's $1,200. You can go get a Kemper for $1,500. Subscribe to this thing, you'll have less than $2,000. You'll have every amp you ever wanted.
Right, and the cool thing about the Kemper is that if you're looking for a hot rod, like a hot rod deluxe type sound, right? For example, you have, there's options out there. You know what I mean? Like it's not reliant on. It's not like if you bought a Kemper and you don't find the hot rod deluxe sound that you're looking for the first time, that there isn't going to be other options. Kemper has a rig manager, for example, where you can actually dig around and find some stuff. It's just a real huge pain in the neck. And yes. I know if there are people out there like me who like to find a brand that they feel represents what they're about, and they like the product consistently, then the whole idea of Tone Crate is not to necessarily keep people from using other people's profiles, but we kind of want to be a solution for those that don't like having to search for profiles endlessly. You can come to us and say, well, I can get the ultimate bundle. I'll start off with 10 amps, which is a variety of sounds. We have a Hot Rod Deluxe, actually the special Guitar Center exclusive with a vintage 30 in it. We have a Marshall JMP Super Lead, which is 100 watt, which is, from the 80s. It's a real nice, sparkly, kind of clean breakup kind of tone. We have several high gain amps, triple rectifier 5150, the Ubershaw 5153. We have the JJ100 that you spoke so kindly of earlier, and that with 2 different cab options. And there's over 10 in that pack. And so a lot of people, when they join, you actually get a special discount on that, where you can buy that for $29.
Wow.
So we're selling the whole pack to brand new subscribers for $29. If you don't take it up in that particular moment, then the price goes up. But it is a one-time offer for new subscribers that's there. But so the whole idea is that you can get that bundle to kind of start you, and then you immediately will get that month's tones, and then next month you'll get new tones. And so something that we haven't touched on, which is something I just want to touch on for a moment, is that we've talked a lot about money, right? A lot of price and how, profiles from other people are expensive. But the thing that, I guess, beyond that kind of wore me out is how overwhelming the whole thing was. right? I mean, I don't know if you can relate to that, but
Oh
when
yeah.
when you first get a Kemper, there's 300 something tones in there, and like I said, most of them are not that great. No offense to anyone that made profiles for that, but they weren't good to me, and so I had to sift through that, and that took days. It wasn't fun, you know. And then when you go and look at other people's packs, there's 10, 15 amps. You're kind of in the same situation. You still have to sift through and find what you like and what you don't like. And when you narrow it down, you realize you ended up paying $100 something or $80 or whatever for a small handful of tones that you can actually use.
Yep.
And that's that whole kind of idea of the overwhelming sense of like, wow, this is just so much. It's something that we really wanted to kind of do away with, to the point to where that it was actually entertaining and fun to go through the sounds and not overwhelming, because there's so much fluff in there.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that, and we're running up against the clock, but on top of that, there is also a Facebook community, a private Facebook community for everybody that is a subscriber. So, if there's tech support and there's a community surrounding it, and it's inspiring. It's an inspiring thing, to have all those sounds and all that stuff available. So very, very cool. Very cool stuff.
Thank you so much.
Very cool stuff. Well, thank you, Clifton Miles from tonecrate.com. Please, if you are watching this in replay, check it out, tonecrate.com. Again, even if you don't play guitar, if you're just working in the studio and you need drum sample, whatever it is, definitely at least go check it out, because there might be something of value for you there. I definitely know that there are more people listening tonight that found value in this than I originally thought, because not a lot of our viewers have Kempers, but they were really excited about the drum samples, and I can tell by our little chat window over here that people have been poking around on your website. So,
oh, nice. And I just want to let them know that if they would like, if for the people that do have Kempers, we do have a free pack on our site right now at tonecrate.com/free profiles. You can actually download a pack that's probably going to be going away in the next 24 hours. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, they should go check it out before we pull it down. Yeah, we have something else that we're drumming up here. No pun intended, but okay. We have something else we're putting together. So they might want to grab that before it goes away.
Okay. No, that is fantastic. She went ahead and shared that in the chat, and we will share that with our viewers as well. I'll actually mention that to those that maybe watch it tomorrow morning or something too.
For sure.
Get it
awesome.
Today. Thanks a lot, Clifton. I appreciate the call, and thanks for chatting with us for a little bit tonight. It's been really fun, and I'm sure that I will be talking to you very soon.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
No problem. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Well, that was pretty cool.
It was really cool.
There's more to that than I knew. I mean, I knew there was more to it than what I originally knew about.
Yeah, but it's nice to know that people can get an overall value, even if they don't have a Kemper maybe yet. No, and understanding a little bit more. We never get to sit around and talk about like just the inspiration value of having stuff available, because it is no joke. If you go to any of the sites and buy any kind of box of software for sounds or for samples it's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And he is right. You buy 10 of them and you might like one or two, and now you just spent $100 for two things, and you're like, oh, and once you're part of that community, once you're a subscriber and you're part of that community and be able to have some input, it's a lot like our community. There's a lot of interaction in there, and he is in there every day talking to people. So, especially since the company is new-ish, this venture of it is newish. It really makes it to where it's cool for people to be able to be a part of it at the beginning. So, thank you so much, everybody, for listening tonight. I know it was a lot of stuff that you may not be familiar with or may have no use for, but I really appreciate you listening, because
again, we're trying to get some people on here that are just helping us to think about playing. That's all it really is. And that's what this was tonight.
Inspiration.
Absolutely. Check out his website, even if you don't have a Kemper, because of the drum stuff. And if you do have a Kemper, check out that code because, or that link, because there might be some free stuff there for you that's going away tomorrow. Until next week, we will talk to you all later, and we will see you on the internets.